Greetings and salutations, young true believers. I want to talk to you today about categorical syllogisms. So, a categorical syllogism is a three-line argument, two premises, and a conclusion, right? And again, being categorical logic, this is the logic of classes of things, right? So, in the last video, we talked about the four categorical claim types. There are A claims, all S are P. There are E claims, no S or P. There are I claims, some S or P. And then there are O claims, some S are not P, right? Subject, predicate being the terms, right? Hence the S and P. All right, so A and I claims, you will recall, are the positive claims, or the affirmative claims, if you will. E and O claims are the negative claims. A and E claims are universal claims, and I and O claims are particular claims. Now, with a couple of examples that'll make a little bit more sense. So, what we want to do is we want to be able to test a categorical syllogism for validity. Now, validity, you'll recall, is a principle in deductive reasoning, right? An argument is valid if it is impossible to derive a false sentence from true premises, right? In other words, an argument is deductive if it's impossible for the conclusion to be true while the premises are true. Or excuse me, if it's impossible for the conclusion to be false, what I meant to say, while the premises are true. All right. So here is an example of a categorical syllogism. No dogs up for adoption at the animal shelter are pedigreed dogs. Some pedigreed dogs are expensive dogs. Some dogs up for adoption at the animal shelter are expensive dogs, right? So, again, Aristotle made this all up 2,500 years ago, and it's remarkable what you can do with just these four, categorical claim types, these four sentences. All right, well, what do we have to do then to be able to test a categorical syllogism for validity? All right, so the first concept you need to know in order to test a syllogism for validity is distribution. So what's distribution? Terms that occur in categorical claims are either distributed or undistributed. So in other words, either the claim says something about every single member of the class the term names, or it doesn't. So let's put some flesh on those bones. In an A claim, let's say we have an A claim, all senators are politicians. In an A claim, the subject term, the first term, is distributed. So when we say all senators are politicians, and we say it's the subject term, in this case senators, that is distributed, what that means is that we're saying something about every single member of that class, every single member of the class, senators. We're saying, regardless of whether it's a white senator, black senator, liberal senator, conservative senator, old senator, young senator, it doesn't matter. If they're a senator, we're attributing to them the characteristic, the predicate of being a politician, right? So in that case, again, in the A claim, the S subject term is distributed. In an E claim, no S or P, both the subject and predicate terms are distributed, right? So if you look at the diagram on page 272 of your text, you'll see the E claim, subject term and predicate term are circled. In A claim, only the subject term is circled. In an I claim, neither subject term nor predicate term are distributed, right? Nothing is distributed in an I claim. And in an O claim, only the predicate term is distributed, not the subject term, right? So that's distribution. Now, this is where I take umbrage, I like that word, with your text. The text only lists 3 rules for testing a syllogism for validity. There are in fact 5 rules for testing a categorical syllogism for validity. The first one is any term that is distributed in the premises of your syllogism must be distributed. Excuse me, I got that wrong. Any term that is distributed in the conclusion of your syllogism must be distributed into premises. So if you have a syllogism like the one that we just talked about, our conclusion is some dogs up for adoption at the animal shelter are expensive dogs, right? So the conclusion of that syllogism is an I claim. So in fact, rule 1 would not apply there because we don't have any terms that are distributed in that conclusion, because again, it's an I claim and nothing's distributed. Okay, what's the second one? At least one premise has to distribute the middle term. So what's the middle term? So in a categorical syllogism, you have 3 terms, each of which appears exactly twice in the syllogism, right? So in this particular example, we've got pedigreed dogs, which is one of our terms. We have dogs up for adoption, which is another term, and we have expensive dogs. So those are our 3 terms. The middle term is going to be the one that appears in both of the premises, but not at all in the conclusion. So in this case, the middle term is pedigreed dogs. That appears in premise 1, it appears in premise 2, it does not appear at all in the conclusion. Pedigreed dogs has to be distributed. So our first term is an E claim, and because we know subject term and predicate term are distributed in an E claim, then we know that the term pedigreed dogs, which again is our middle term, appears in both the premises, not at all in the conclusion, is distributed, right? So far we passed rules 1 and 2. What's rule 3? You must have at least one affirmative claim. Now remember, our affirmative claims are A and I claims, right? And we have an I claim as premise 2, so we pass rule 3. We got to have at least one affirmative claim. Now, rule 4. If you have a negative claim as your conclusion, you must have a negative premise. If you have a negative premise, you must have a negative conclusion. So we have a negative claim. We have an E claim as premise 1, no dogs up for adoption at the animal shelter or pedigreed dogs. But we have an I claim as our conclusion. So this one fails rule 4. Again, if you have a negative conclusion, you must have a negative premise. If you have a negative premise, you must have a negative conclusion. This one fails rule 4, and hence it's invalid. But let's just keep going on. We got one more rule. Rule 5 is, if you have a particular claim as the conclusion, an I or an O claim as your conclusion, and we have an I claim as our conclusion in this example, then you must have an I or an O claim as one of the premises. We would have passed that rule because we have an I claim as the second premise. But again, we failed rule 4, so this one is invalid. You only have to fail one of the rules to be invalid. So I posted some videos that they'll give you examples of these, right? People working out or testing syllogisms for validity. So look at that. And on Monday, we will begin the second part, chapter 9 of deductive logic.